It's showtime. Are we live? We're live. Hello, everybody. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, I'm back. Hopefully you guys aren't sick of me again. So pleasure to be back.
I'm just going to project how I feel about you to the rest of the world because I'm always happy to see you and you just bring me joy. So hopefully all of our listeners are going to feel that same joy having you back again. So,
Karen and I. Yes, we do have a guest today, but I was going to say, Karen and I, our meetings go for hours at a time. So always a pleasure to be with you too.
It's true. I know. We're going to have to watch the clock on this one because Natalie and I tend to go down rabbit holes together. So anyway, but fun fact, we have a special guest star.
Yes, we do. Miss Maggie, would you like to wave to the audience?
Miss Maggie is too sleepy. Miss Maggie, just so everybody knows, and the reason why I'm indulging her right now is I was away, as you all know, I was in Thailand for last week's show and for our APAC event. And so Maggie has pretty much been attached to my hip since I walked through the door. She's not having it. And she's trying to get on my lap as close as possible. But she's, a big dog. She can't sit on my lap while I work. So anyway, so we're indulging her by letting her, just photobomb us. So anyway, so kudos to you, Nat, for last week. I was really excited because, the time change is significant. So it was the middle of the night when you aired. But when I woke up the next day, I was seeing rave reviews and live viewership last week was higher than it had been. So good for you, girl.
Hey, thanks. I try.
You did great. You did great. And, I know today is going to be smooth too, especially because you have your coffee. So cheers. Good morning.
I know. Yeah. Cheers. Took me a minute. Karen was very patient and watched me make my coffee this morning. So
it's funny. So I'm, as many of you know, I'm on the East Coast. That's on the West Coast. So, I end up having a few quiet mornings and she has some quiet afternoons, but pretty much from 12 to 5, we're almost in constant communication because Natalie and I collaborate on our content across all of our events, across our podcast. And, I couldn't do what I do without Natalie. So anyway, I'm like your biggest fan, Nat. Anyway, yeah.
So should we dive into today's topics?
We should. And we're going to start with 2 content pieces. So one of the shows that I caught up on, when I came back was a podcast, speaking of podcasts, but our senior sales rep, Kevin Lang, was on Matt Valley's Rock and Roll Research podcast. So I'm sure Carly will share that link. If you haven't had a listen, it's a really fun listen. First of all, that podcast is new to me, so I'm excited. But also it was really neat to hear Kevin talking about how excited he is to be at Green Book, how much he likes the team, because he's one of our newer hires. So did you get to have a listen to it, Natalie?
I did, actually. I really enjoyed it. And, I think Karen posted something yesterday about how likable Kevin is as a person. Absolutely true. Also, big shout out to Matt. I know he tunes into the exchange with some frequency. So hopefully he's in the audience again today. And he'll be joining us at North America. So if you want to listen to more of the podcast, make sure to come to the event.
Yeah, if you've never been to our live podcast stage, it's really cool. There's mood lighting and it's our purple stage. So there's this groovy kind of darkness, but with purple lights of everybody's headsets and backlighting on the podcast stage itself. So it's a pretty cool place to be. You're sitting in couches and you're taking in that. Anyway, it's my favorite stage of all of our stages. So I'm excited. Matt gave us a little piece. So I'm really excited about that. And and back to Kevin, now we have some fodder for our playlist for the Airbnb that the team stays in and some of our team events that are happening there. We now know what to add to the playlist, right? So pretty cool. And there's more hot content out in the world. So let's shift to the other big piece, right? I was
just going to say, which I know we kind of touched on this last week a little bit, but we've got a new update here.
Yeah. So it's 10,000 Humans. They released episode 2 of the Paid for Your Say saga on LinkedIn. So you have to go to LinkedIn to take this in. I am pretty biased that I love it because I facilitated the conversation. So there's a lot of me, which just ignore me. I'm just the facilitator asking the questions. But what is being unveiled is pretty fascinating, just talking about the inner workings and really looking under the hood of this organization. And it's crazy.
And we'll be continuing that conversation at North America as well. So, Karen will be there along with Carrie Hecht, Isaac Rogers, Catherine Hill, and Cherise Shields. So make sure to come check that out as well. I'm really excited to listen into that. Again, North America is just I think probably favorite event. I also love the other ones, but North America is so fun. So
I know, it's good energy. And this panel, I think, I could be wrong because I haven't looked at this specifically, but I think it's kicking off our data quality track. So
yes,
it's going to be hopefully joined by other content about this big hot topic. So anyway, so yeah, super excited about that. And you know what's interesting about this particular saga, for lack of a better word, is the conversations that people are having, the thoughts that people are having when they're listening. So the LinkedIn threads are interesting because other people, like, you know, Karine Pepin shared, for instance, in response to this, some of the things that she works on when it comes to data quality. So it's kicking off conversation. And actually, Des, who was a part of that conversation, she messaged me this morning talking about our kind of our private meeting program and the roundtable discussions that you can host. And they're probably going to host a roundtable conversation around this. So anybody who's tuned into the saga can also then participate in a conversation if you look for that, which becomes apparent in the event app and so on and so forth. So look for the opportunity to have your own, to participate in the conversation, I guess is my point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think next in the conversation, we wanted to touch on some more acquisitions this week. Karen, you want to start diving in?
Yeah. So speaking of data quality, right? The first acquisition, or not acquisition, the first sort of launch, which actually stems out of an acquisition. You know, Lenny and I have talked a lot about the acquisitions that have been happening in the last year, and they're all quite strategic when you see them play out. So Stagwell launched an Unlock Surveys panel. Now, Stagwell is the owner of the Harris Poll and Harris X brands, as well as the Maru Group. So they launched this new global research community called Unlock Surveys. And this one is interesting from a data quality standpoint. You want to share the kind of quote from the press release in there, what the members are going to be going through?
Yeah, it says all members of the panel will be emailed double opted in and will be required to pass a series of stringent quality measures, including cutting edge bot deterrence, fraud prevention systems before being available for a survey.
So cool. And what I think is really important for all of the survey providers that are listening to us right now, this to me is like a proof point of the measures that companies have to put into place and also how they have to disclose what they're doing. Like, you have to be transparent about what you're doing to protect that data integrity. So anyway, pretty cool launch and worth talking about. And because these companies, you know, came together under this roof of Stagwell to do this, I think it's telling to other things we might see coming down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff.
Couldn't agree more, Karen.
Yes, I know. Well, we could preach a lot about data quality, but right now it's good to see it all playing out. So, yeah. You know, another one of these product launches, which seemingly you might not think is a big deal, but stay with us for it. Bright Mountain Media launched a Mom Life panel, and the idea is it's a product that provides insights into maternal consumer behavior. Brands can access moms across the U.S. So you might think, like, why is this such a big deal? But let's go there. Like, there's points. Go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the more important things to note is just the spending power that moms have. You know, it's over $2 trillion and, you know, influence over 85% of household purchasing decisions. So I think a really important panel to have and, you know, understand where those acquisitions or purchases are going.
Yeah, they're like the eternal gatekeeper, right? Gatekeepers of almost all household purchases go through, you know, the mom, even with the trends towards, you know, men doing more of the grocery shopping and making more of the purchase decisions. That's legit, but moms are really gatekeepers, right? So one of the things that's interesting about this, though, is not just that there's a mom panel, because I think there are probably lots of, even many of our partners who might say, well, we have a mom panel too. Like, mom panels in and of themselves aren't necessarily, you know, rocket science in the world of insights. But this one is that there was another acquisition, right? So Bright Mountain Media acquired Big Village Insights. So this media company, this company that has content, that has, that has advertising opportunities, they acquired an insights company to help inform their audience. So they're it's just a media company that acquired an insights form so that their decisions and that their customers' decisions can be more informed by the very consumers that they're targeting, is to me what the news is here. Like we've got media consulting happening with consumer insights and the voice of the customer being rolled into it. So I think it's a pretty big deal.
Right. And I think that kind of goes back also to where, insights functions sit within companies and how we think about insights and, who we deliver insights to. Because I think that can vary so much from org to org.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, excellent point. Excellent point. And let's talk about this third one, because it brings up, brings up AI as we get to every single week, right? So Ledger announces the acquisition of Cube AI. Now, I don't know much about either of these companies. I don't know if you do, Nat. But Ledger is a Canadian-owned market research and analytics firm, and they acquired 51% of the shares of this AI-driven advertising test platform to kind of boost their capabilities. So it's just another indication of a research company buying into an AI platform to enhance their offerings. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely that's going to be a trend that we see more and more. So just kind of bracing ourselves to see where the money goes and how the trends follow.
Yeah. And I think our supply, again, back to like the suppliers that are out there, we've been preaching about, get on the AI bandwagon and lean in and figure stuff out. But sorry, just distracted by my shadow over here.
It's the 2-letter word and she wants to hop in.
I know. She's like, anyway, she's such a good girl. Anyway, I think that people are leaning into AI, but they're also looking at who can they partner with? What AI firms can they get involved with to help enhance their offerings if they don't have internal capabilities? I think that's really important for people out there, looking, researching, how can you make sure AI is a part of your product offering moving forward? Because that's what's about to keep happening more and more.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's even a trend that we've seen, especially at our in-person events with, any vendors who might be present there. Are definitely showing the capabilities that they're, integrating into their own practices. So I'm really excited to see, again, how that plays out in North America this year. So.
Yeah. No, and I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to read this message. I'm currently incorporating AI into various stages of my package design. Eye tracking research does have some interesting use cases. Yeah, some from Richard Moniz. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality, right? Is experiment with the AI, figure out how you can incorporate it into your current offerings, figure out if you can't figure it out, then start to research what AI companies are out there and just go to what are the possibilities, the imagine if space, because that's where we're at, right? Anyway, we're going to see so much of that. Nat, do you, you've been spending more time on the agenda the last 2 weeks while I was away, but would you say we have more AI than you expected, less AI than you expected? Where do you think, or just the right sweet spot? Where do you think we're at?
I think we're in that sweet spot. I think last year we saw a lot of people, buzzing, trying to figure out where does AI sit. And that was a lot more of, how to incorporate AI. And this year, I think is going to be a lot more tangible takeaways as far as how people are actually implementing it and what that looks like. And, that's, I think, one of the best things about listening to other people's sessions is understanding what you can glean from somebody else's practice and use in your own.
I know, for sure. And even like the demo stage. So we do have a demo stage at our event, and you can see that it might not be like, I might not be interested in that technology, so I'm not going to attend that demo. But the reality is you can see how they figured out to use this tool in their practices and come up with ideas for your own. So I think that stage is actually going to be popping this year.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Anyway, but that's us. We're super biased. Like you probably will, we'll learn, like Natalie and I are so jazzed about what we're bringing to North America.
I think we spend time putting together 180 sessions, I think. So, or maybe it's 130. I might have misspoke there. But it's hard to not get excited when you're looking at it every day. So
no, it's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So speaking of AI, again, let's go here, because Lenny found this article that's sort of like, anyway, why don't you share a little bit about it, because it's not a product offering, it's really just information.
Yeah, it's more of an op-ed of sorts, on how AI is reshaping online advertising practices. Easy enough read, definitely thought-provoking, I think definitely worth a read. So I would recommend checking that one out. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, it's called Ads in the Age of AI. And when you read it, you might see your own behavior in it, which I've said a million times. Like, I love seeing my own behavior in things that I take in, but it's, kind of pointing out that AI is disrupting how consumers are accomplishing tasks. And therefore, traditional internet advertising isn't going to be as effective because we might be taking shortcuts. We might be going to ChatGPT to get some answers, and we're not being bombarded with ads when we're there. We're getting very perhaps biased by the information that it has to date, but it's free from advertising at the moment. That may change.
Right, right.
And as opposed to when you go on Google and there's, you're looking something up on Google and the first few responses are all sponsored. So you're getting that kind of a bias. So it's really interesting to think about how this is affecting internet advertising and what's going to happen next. And if I was in that space, I'd be paying close attention to this opinion as well as some of the others.
Yeah, absolutely. And Karen, I know we didn't necessarily talk about this one beforehand, but I think another thing in AI updates that I saw this week that I thought was interesting is the CTO of OpenAI sat down for an interview. I'm sure many people saw that. And basically, they put together all these prompts for different video to pull together. And one of them was a bowl in a china shop, which looked conspicuously similar to like Ferdinand the Bull from the Pixar studios.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
When the interviewer asked her how they're training the AI, she basically had no comment. She, didn't want to dive in. Was a really big kind of drama this week, because I think it's interesting to think about, how are we training AI? What does that look like? Because her initial response was really, we're using open sources on the internet, but doesn't necessarily seem like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, how that pertains to different fields of AI and what that looks like.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. That's incredibly interesting. And there's them, by the way, we're curating for this show all week long, right? So there's a lot that we don't cover that's big picture, but there's a lot of there was chatter this week too, that always about like copyright laws and what's the latest and what are the regulations. Like, we're at no standstill in the progression of the legalities of all of this stuff, right? So, every week there
Upward dog.
Yeah,
I love that she joined this show this week.
Oh my gosh. I really just hope everybody out there that is, understanding of, this dog behavior. So she's just got to get a little more comfortable now. Anyway, hold on. Let's see. Richard, she didn't get into specifics for sure. She simply said it was publicly available in open source. Copyrighted material can be publicly available. Yes. Right. Thank you. Richard, thank you so much for joining into the conversation. I love that so much.
Yeah. I will say, as the interviewer pressed more, she did get to a point where she said, I don't want to comment, which I think is interesting. I think really not wanting to talk about the specifics there. So that's where I think the water gets a little bit more murky.
Murky for sure. And she probably, has her own legal counsel for what she can and cannot say even.
Right.
You must have to be semantically very careful if that's business, because there's so much at stake. So super interesting.
I think that also raises another question about more specific use cases is, how do you train these LLMs for, what you want it to do? It really needs to have the right inputs. And so if that isn't publicly available, what is that adoption going to look like? Is it going to be a more expensive cost option to train then and utilize in, individual companies, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Couldn't agree more, Nat. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you. Is there anything else I missed? If there's anything else I missed, you have to tell me.
I don't think so. That was just the one that I was excited about, because I definitely watched the majority of that video. So I thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, cool. No, I was on the other side of the world. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up. It was funny. anyway, the only big story that I couldn't really avoid coming home and re-entering, like I literally had to say to myself this week, I think I better watch the news because I was checked out. When you travel like that, you get kind of checked out from the day by day. But there was one big story happening this week that we absolutely have to talk about, which is what's going on TikTok.
Oh
no! I know, it's okay. Anyway, it's friends. I came home with a little bit touch of bronchitis, so it's fine. Everything's fine. But yeah, like let's talk about it. But bottom line, if you've been living under a rock has it just been 48 hours that this came up? I don't even remember.
Yeah, it's pretty recent for sure.
Yeah. So here in the US, if you're listening overseas, you've probably also heard, though, the House has passed a bill that could lead to a TikTok ban. And now it's being taken up in our Senate. And so, yeah, lots of legislative attention being turned to TikTok, which, we've had TikTok speak at our events before. So there's a part of me that wants to call them up and say, oh my gosh, tell us what's going on internally, with all of this chatter. But it's really interesting. So interesting for a million reasons. So Nat, you go ahead and start with what you were telling me about your generation's word on the street about this.
So, and I have mixed opinions because I think to some extent, I understand the concern as it pertains to the upcoming elections and, how social media is used to really move the masses, if you will.
Yeah.
But I've also seen one of my friends posted something, and it was clear that the content creator who made this video was, I think, probably a bit younger than me as well, but probably closer to college age, but basically saying that they're trying to silence us for, freedom of speech, which I thought was an interesting take. And I still don't really know where I stand there, but I also feel that there's a lot of disinformation on a lot of social media. That's obviously not new news. So for that reason, I don't know if I fully agree, but I also don't know if I agree with the ban as a whole. So I'm not sure what you feel. Or if
I can't pretend to be an expert in issues of national security. I mean, I don't even want to pretend, right? About
you're not CIA? Just kidding.
I'm not CIA. I am not. You might be surprised. Although back in the day, I did put on a CIA identity at bars when I was, in my flirtatious stage. I, had to tell people that I couldn't share what I did for a living because I was CIA. That was fun. Anyway, sorry, as I date myself there. The reality is I get really mixed about this too, because I know, and we've had at North America, I think was it 2 years ago now that Renato was there from YouTube, talking about, our society of creators and people who are making a living, whether you're an influencer or a content creator. This is your livelihood, and say what you will about it. It's what people have started to do for a living.
Right.
And to take that away from people abruptly when they worked really hard to get in on the curve ahead of time, I think is very dangerous for our country. So yeah, being silenced, telling people what they can and cannot do. I think it's interesting. I think it's dangerous. And my chatter in my internet, my feeds about this was all like, the tongue in cheek. Are you kidding me? Like, this is what we're going to hang our hats on. Like, we have so many perceivably bigger issues to deal with. And we're going to focus on TikTok, which is why we just have to talk about it. Right. So, yeah.
Yes. So I think, for all the Americans in the audience sitting in anticipation, we will see. We'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting time to navigate. But I definitely agree with you, Karen. I think there are also massive economic implications as so far as, putting that many people out of work, because a lot of people have gone that way. Yeah. And then also, a lot of marketing for brands now is done through those influencers, which is so interesting. I think there are often, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but when the little affiliate marketing, that's what I'm looking for. So I think that will be interesting as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I am on TikTok. Lenny, it's funny because Lenny is like, so not on social media, but I'm like I love it. I also have the feeling that like I like to show up where the people are and like see what's going on. So I certainly was going to get in on the TikTok phase and have lost more than my fair share of time just, TikTok scrolling. But yeah, the brands that are there, I follow a bunch of some of my favorite brands. Like when I'm a brand fan, I want to see what they're doing and what they're putting out because I love it. And then I have also ordered something on the TikTok shop that I didn't quite know I was doing, but that's a separate story, so, and then I've also clicked on affiliate links and gone to Amazon pages. Like I'm like in, right? So, and I think that that's one of the differences too, is what type of feed you get. Like, what is your TikTok? Because for me, I can't fathom anything really dangerous happening there about my behavior, but, we'll see. And we'll also see if there's a US buyer, if that's even going to float. So anyway, Richard is saying as a Canadian, so see difference, right? As a Canadian where it won't be banned, it will be interesting to see what changes. I suspect many might just use a VPN to pretend they're Canadian. Oh, that's clever. Interesting. Very.
I will say I don't have TikTok, but I
don't have TikTok?
I don't have TikTok, but I do have Instagram. I find that most of my content that I see on Instagram even is people directly uploading from TikTok.
Yeah.
So I think there is also a possibility that we just see a shift back towards Instagram as the predominant, platform for people in the US because they have that Reels feature. So you still get the scrolling that you get on TikTok. Doom scroll, if you will.
Anyway, I know. Anyway, it might seem, I just want to make this like full circle. It might seem like, all right, why are we talking about social media? But to your point now, a lot of brands are on these platforms using it for advertising vehicles. A lot of consumers are, are changing their behavior, considerably based on what they see there. Yeah. So Richard's saying I avoided TikTok as well. The info it tracks scares me. I know I should be more scared, right? I'm just one of those really trusting people and I am just never that scared, but maybe I should be. Anyway. So we'll watch that play out, right? We'll see what happens and we'll keep you updated. We've actually even joked about whether we as a media company need to be on TikTok. So that's really interesting to me because does Green Book need to have a TikTok feed? We are on other social media channels, so it's worth us paying attention to, right? Because our business is there. Do we need to go there? So hold on. And Matt is saying, I tried to pretend I was Canadian once in Europe, went very, very poorly. Ask me about it sometime. I will ask you about it at North America. I have a French Canadian maiden name, so I can always go by Langevin and pretend I'm Canadian because Langevin is a very Anyway, very recognizable in Canada maiden name. So maybe I could actually get away with it. We shall see. I don't know if I'll go down that path. Anyway, Nat, what else do we have to talk about? We have a few announcements to make, right? I'm going to let you take over because it's all event related, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Karen and I have been talking a bit about North America, but just as a reminder, we do have some other events coming up. So we'll have IAX Europe in Amsterdam. I also love that event. And then IAX LATAM, which we haven't done in a while. So very excited to bring that back as an in-person event. That one will be in Miami. So make sure to check that out. But you can register for any of these events with 20% off with the code EXCHANGE on the registration page. And then for those who have their eyes set on the Europe event, just a reminder that today is the last day for early bird registration. So make sure to get that lower price today. And the last thing is that the call for speakers for LATAM is still open. So if you're interested in speaking, Karen and I go through all of those personally. And, we're always excited to see what comes in and then hopefully get you a spot on our stage. So make sure to check that out.
Yeah. And that event, just so for everybody listening, it is in Miami. It has been in many Latin American countries before. Right now it's in Miami for the convenience of a lot of organizations that can travel east to Miami and not necessarily country to country. And it's going to be, not just talking, not just centered on the Latin American consumer here in the US, although we will be talking about that. How do you market to them, but also to consumers in Latin American countries, and also different companies that are operating there. So for US partners, you may want to see who you can partner with in some of those countries to reach those markets easily. So it's really going to be an event that will be, connecting buyers and sellers and approaching consumers, here in the US and also abroad. So it's going to be a really exciting event. I'm jazzed for it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So
Cool.
Well, Karen, thanks for having me on again. It was fun to do it with you. I got time with Lenny, time with you. Very excited.
I know. When Lenny and I are going to be back at it next week, and we're going to be missing you. So you'll have to maybe, pop into the green room and then pop up and just hello. Very cool. Yeah, that's our show. It's half an hour. Friends, thank you. Have a great weekend. Have a great St. Patrick's Day. Be safe celebrating. I wish you all the luck of the Irish. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
All righty.
All right. Later, Nat. Talk to you, I'm sure, in an hour.